Thanks for being with us tonight. We have Betsy McCann, who is a 1999 graduate from Eden Prairie High School, cross country and track runner. Thanks for being with us, Betsy.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
And I think the thing that I want to highlight tonight that we'll talk a lot about is not just what you accomplished in high school, but your position right now. Would you explain to us what you do right now for a living?
You bet. I am the director of the University of Minnesota Marching Band and a professor in the School of Music at the University of Minnesota.
So, so going back to your high school days, how did you originally get started in running? And then with that, how do you get started in music? Both those areas as well.
Yeah, music was earlier. I just started fifth grade band like everybody else, and I didn't think I would do it, and I didn't think I would be good at it. But everyone else did it, so I did band, and it turned out that I loved it, and I did have some talent for it. So that just kind of took off from that point. Running, I didn't start before high school at all. I didn't run in middle school. I think I was just kind of like 100% band kid. And then my good friend who lived in my neighborhood was Brenna Johnson. She was 2 years ahead of me at school, and she was on the cross country team. And before ninth grade, for me, she said, "Oh, and by the way, you're joining cross country, so let's start running." And I was like, well, okay, I guess this is what I'm doing. And I remember my first run, she took me out, and I was wearing like jean cutoff shorts because that's what I had. I didn't have athletic shorts and terrible shoes. And she took me on a 6-mile run,
Oh boy.
and I almost died. It was awful, but that was my introduction. And then I was like, okay, here, I'm gonna get going so I can do this for real.
You got
So,
it.
and then I loved it. I've loved it since.
That's awesome. So by the time you were a senior, you were a captain on our cross country team. What are some memories you have of high school? Just of workouts, Coach Anderson, who was our head coach at the time, meets, different things like that. Anything comes to mind?
Yeah, a ton of memories. I think for all of us who ran, it was such a big part of our lives at that time. And I was never one of the top runners. I mean, I was never running varsity. I was kind of a middle of the pack runner, but I loved it and I worked hard and I had a lot of fun with it. I remember hill runs. And one of the things that I still use, and I tell my band students, and especially when students are struggling with life stuff, is I remember Mr. A in the hill runs, you could do somewhere between this many repeats and that many repeats, and you could choose when you were ready to quit. But he said, you can't quit at the top of the hill. You have to get back down to the bottom and then decide. And I use that now, if a student's going through something and they're just done and they're fed up and life is hard, they're at the top of the hill. And I talk about you need that recovery period and you need to kind of come down from the top and then you can decide what to do and make your decision. But that's stuck with me ever since.
I mean, we still use that analogy, or that advice all the time in running hill workouts. You got to get through it, do your recovery, and then you make the decision. But I never thought about this as a life analogy. That's so applicable. It's very true. Music, and before we started the interview, you and I were talking about the parallels between music and running. What are some of the things that you've learned in your life through running, and I think through music as well, that have just been good life lessons for you? You mentioned the hill running or finishing, getting to the recovery part. What else would you say?
I think the idea of just getting out the door to do the workout, whether or not you feel like it, that is huge. And I think all of us who run know that the days probably when you least feel like it are the days you probably need the run the most and you really need to get out and do it. And certainly with music, if you stop practicing for a couple days in a row, you're going to be in trouble. So both sides of what I did growing up, the music and the running, really taught me that lesson, which is helpful now. Everyone going to work every day and right now doing work at home and having everything be so bizarre. It's nice to be able to fall back on that idea of like, no, I know I just need to do the work and get it done and then get on and do that next thing. So that was a big lesson from both of those.
That's true. What one of the things that, whether or not I can't remember if you mentioned this earlier or not, but being the marching band director at the U of M, not only that, but you were the first female marching band director, not only at the University of Minnesota, but the entire Big Ten conference. When you walked into a position like that and you knew you were, I don't use the word groundbreaking, but to an extent of that, what were some of the things of confidence that you've fallen back on that have been helpful through your career?
Yeah, that's a great question. I guess at first, when I realized that I had this like distinction, I suppose, of being the first female, I wanted to kind of ignore it and feel like that wasn't a thing. And I just wanted to put my head down and work and not get the attention for the female part. Mm-hmm. And then I realized as I talked to people and I had contacts from women who were a generation before me or, a generation and a half who were never allowed to even march in a college band, and people who had these stories where it was so important to them that I was in this position as I was, that helped me realize, okay, this is a big deal for a lot of people and I need to acknowledge it and be okay with that and kind of just live with it. And then I could start, doing my work and showing that, yeah, maybe I'm the first woman to have a job, but I actually do a really good job at it, and I have a lot to show. Then I could start to have people noticing what I'm doing instead of just who the person is doing that. But I think through running, I learned a lot about not always being confident and not always being comfortable in what I was doing, like I was right away in this job. I was never, like I said, a top runner, and I was never the kid who was feeling great about it. I had to work really hard to get where I got with running. And that certainly helped in getting this new job, having it be a big job, and having a lot of attention focused on me right away. I knew that I was able to just work through it and do what I do best, which is running a band.
I think one of the cool things for Eden Prairie that, I certainly take pride in, or our community, the people who know you do, is the fact that not only you're the first female band director at the U of M, but also the fact that Molly Waters, who graduated probably about 10 years ago, was a shot putter on our track team at Eden Prairie. And she was the first female drum major at the University of Minnesota as well. So pretty cool that we've got two groundbreaking people coming from our program in our school at Eden Prairie, which is definitely a sense of pride. You and I also talked earlier about, we hear so much today about multi-sport athletes, and I've always expanded that to not just multi-sport athletes, but multi-event students. You had the experience, and I think, unfortunately, I think there's fewer and fewer kids today who get the chance to do the arts and do athletics and do student government, different things like that. What would you say about that in terms of advice to kids today?
Yeah, I see that all the time with college students too, as well as high school students, this idea that like you have to go down one track and be the one thing to kind of reach your goal. But life is not linear like that. At least it has not been for me. I've definitely learned. And I think the ironic thing about me running cross country in high school is that I ran cross country and I dropped out of marching band in order to do it, which is a little weird considering my job right now. But I had to make the decision of, I only have so many hours in the day, and what am I going to do? And at that time, everything else I was doing was music. And I thought, okay, marching band is fabulous, but I can't do everything, and I want to do something that's not music. So I ran, and I didn't do marching band, which I'm not sure if my teachers were happy about at the time.
Seemed to work out pretty well in the end of the day.
Well, and that's the thing, I think being well-rounded and taking the chance to do something that I just loved just because, not because it was what I wanted to do forever, not because it was what I excelled at, but because I just loved it and it was important to my life. It didn't obviously harm my chances of going forward and doing what I wanted to do on the music side of things. So I think it's worth doing something outside of like a narrow track just to be a more full human being. And I still run today, and it's really important to my life. I run most days, and it just keeps me centered mentally. It gives me just some quiet time in my head. It's a chance for me to be alone, which, when I teach 300 students in a class, I'm never alone. At home I've got kids, and it's kind of an important thing for me still now. So I'm glad I had that base in high school.
Yeah, that's a great perspective, looking at the well-roundedness of life. And hey, Betsy, I really appreciate being with us and doing this interview. You're always welcome to come back. We'd love to have you come back to Eden Prairie whenever you're in town for anything. Go Eagles and go Gophers, right?
Sounds great. Go Eagles and go Gophers. Thanks.
Thanks, Betsy.